Welcome, Wargamers, to the deepest depths of Aya itself as we follow the Dweghom and we explore their regiment known as the Initiates, who have a very interesting way that they fit into the overall Dweghom lore. This is one of the newer kits that came out from Bellum, and so I wanted to take some time to talk about their backstory, how they fit into the faction, kind of loop in some Dweghom history there, so we have a perspective of the army as a whole, so how they fit in militarily, but also like as a identity for the unit itself. And then we'll just have a discussion about why these guys are so stinking cool. They are certainly a regiment that I am intensely excited about, specifically in playing First Blood. We'll touch on gameplay in a little bit here, but I could not be more stoked to jump into the Initiates. Now, really quickly before that, if you see anything you're interested in, the art or the lore, or even the models for this video, please consider using my affiliate link for Bellum in the description down below. It'll save you 10% on all of your purchases and goes an exceptionally long way to supporting me as a content creator. This channel and my family and everything, we thank you so much. None of it would be possible without you folks going out there and using that link. So with Bellum, we get these little one paragraph lore blurbs for each regiment. Like all the specific units in the game all have a little blurb about them. Of course, then the faction itself has a much larger detailed account of, their history and stuff. So let's talk about the lore behind the Initiates. Reading from the Bellum website, all Dweghom honor the Dukoro, the descent of their ancestors into the fiery core of war's prison. None take it as far as the Ardent, who actively reenact it. Initiates are those prospective members of the Ardent Creed who band together to take part in battles to gain some experience before exposing themselves to the real danger of the Dukoro. Be they shield-bearing warriors or ballista specialists, when one encounters unranked hold warriors, he will most likely be facing hardened veterans who have devoted their life to military service. The small percentage who are not lifelong servicemen, however, trade battlefield experience for ambition and ruthlessness, making them just as dangerous on the field of battle. And that's their little blurb from the web store, of all things. Now, I want to unpack some of the details there, because that'll kind of fill in some of the information for those of you who might be new to Conquest and don't really know how the Dweghom, fit into things. As I mentioned, I do have a lore series on them, just 2-part videos, talking about the backstory, their origins and stuff, but I'll give you an abbreviated one here. Essentially, the setting begins with a series of creatures that are dragons. The dragons learn how to create living things from the spires, and they use it to create a servant race known as dwarves. So, dwarves exist to serve dragons. Over millennia, though, they started to have all kinds of societal problems. The building blocks of what made the dwarves in the Conquest universe it didn't work. And at one point, they were mining while their dragons were asleep, and they find a subchamber leading deep, deep into the core of the earth. Exploring it, they find a prison containing the primordial god known as War. Just as other game systems have primordial ancient gods of, death, destruction, rage, whatever, they're different depending on what game system you're talking about. War is an integral one here. Well, when those initial dwarves tap into whatever this prison is, it sets their minds afire. It basically hot wires a servant-based race into becoming something different. And so this is what separates dwarves from Dweghom. Dweghom have been touched by the fires of war, meaning the primordial god. They don't want to be a servant race. They want to fight. They want to crush. They want to consume. They want to punish. They want payback. And so this event, known as the Dukoro, is this initial band of Dweghom in their history going down and basically communing with a deity directly, War, and taking his power and rage and bringing it back to the surface. So that is their mythos. They're part of their origin story. And so some members of the Dweghom, now that they are free, they conquer the dragons and all these kinds of things, establish themselves all across the planet. Now the question becomes, do we honor that, or do we just take those gifts and express gratitude? For those of the Ardent Creed, a sub-faction within the Dweghom, they believe that we should do regular reenactments, or I would call them more like pilgrimages, down to War's prison, have more Dweghom personally commune with this deity, and then just keep bringing that energy up, that rage, that anger, The thing that set them free, I want more of it. That's the basic premise. They use the word reenactment. When I think reenactment, I think of like Civil War reenactors, which is cool, but it's not the same thing as like literally going on a journey to the basement of hell and like high-fiving Satan. Like, it's not the same vibe as like a Civil War reenactor. So I like to call it a pilgrimage a little bit more. I think that translates better in terms of its tone. And so the regiment that you and I get to play with, known as initiates, are essentially people who are trying to go out and fight and kind of gain battle experience. Now, we're not told necessarily why that's important. It could be a few things. It could be that they wanted to prepare their bodies and their minds for taking in war's essence. Meaning, I'm going to go fight a whole bunch of wars against normal people up above the surface, and then when I go underground and commune with the deity of war, I will have much more context to understand whatever I am shown. Conversely, it could be you want to get some notches on your belt in terms of enemies you've slain, so that when you go, you can show up in front of war and have, some kind of accolade, if you will. Yeah, I've fought. I've ended lives. I know how cool this is. I know how cool war is. Not necessarily to boast, of course, but just to prove that you are worthy to be there. And so this is where they kind of get a mix. So on one hand, they are normal dwarves. Right? There's nothing inherently amazing about the initiates because they haven't been fully initiated into whatever they're going to become later on. But they are ambitious and they are zealots, because this is sort of I guess if you wanted to call a unit zealots and have like a religious arm, obviously if you're talking 100 Kingdoms, that's going to be the Theist Priest and whatever their zealots are called. But in the Dweghom, it would be the Ardent Karawa, or the Tempered Sorcerer, who sort of lead, the, I guess, magical and or religious side of things. I think the Karawa more than the Sorcerer, but these would be your devoted. Those people who are like enraptured with the story and the myth of their origins, and they want to be a piece of that tale, or to be an icon of it. So if you go down there and you touch the face of God itself and you come back, you are an idol, a walking idol amongst your people. And remember, the Dweghom in Conquest are all about accruing what they call Dweghom, meaning renown, battlefield prowess, respect, sort of a social credit that's built upon your accomplishments, your faith, and war. And so this would be obviously a great way to get that. Now, one of the things I love about this regiment in general is, we're actually going to throw it up on the screen here, is they are some of the most unique models because they fight in two ranks. If you're playing Last Argument of Kings, in the front row, you'll have a line of guys with these huge towering shields, which I imagine would be very useful to have in front of you as you, approach direct face-to-face with a deity. It might be nice to hide behind something to maybe, take away some of the power of its countenance. But your front rank is a whole bunch of shield bearers, and your second rank is essentially pikemen that are stabbing through or to the side of those shields. I like to imagine the initiates as like chanting, not necessarily like religious chants, but maybe just recalling the tales of that original Decoro or whatever. I almost want to get some purity seals and put them on the actual shields for my guys. I think that would look really, really neat. But what I like about it is you have a regiment that's lore is based upon what unites the Dweghom, right? What unites us is our origins in this particular mythos, this story, this thing that we can do a pilgrimage to, reenact, however you want to word it. And so as a unit on the table, like in terms of the actual rules, it's cool to see them represented as like working together. Like the shield guy's working with a spear guy. I think that is so cool. Because a lot of times in Dweghom lore, you can look at stuff and everyone's just kind of like bristly and kind of a solo, even though they have to work together as an army to function. But these guys seem much more ready to play ball when it comes to like, no. The thing that unites us as initiates in this regiment is that we all want to tell this story. We all want to stand before war. And so there's almost like this brotherhood kind of feel. And that gets translated to the models by having literally half the unit support the other half of the unit. I like that quite a bit. When we're talking like, sometimes I'll pull up the rules for a regiment just to be able to kind of like extrapolate lore based on the rules. Like, what are you trying to articulate here, Parabellum? And they have 3 special rules that all make absolute sense. Devout, they love receiving blessings and prayers and that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of buffs associated with it. Shield, of course, the whole front rank of the unit is dudes with giant shields taller than they are. And support, meaning the guys in the second rank who can stab forward through those shields. Now, I will say I do think this regiment is way more interesting in First Blood, the skirmish variant of the game, because when you buy a regiment of initiates, you have to choose polearm guys or shield guys, and they have bonuses and they have all kinds of ways of helping each other, but they act independently, and it's very cool. All different strengths and ways to customize them. You could just bring a wall of shields and like, boom, this is my bulwark. I dare you to crush through it. And with so many rules that go from model to model rather than like regiment to regiment in terms of measuring distance and weapon engagement, that kind of stuff, the polearm guys are terrific. Support is an incredibly cool rule in First Blood. As is just having a giant frickin' shield unit that does nothing except take damage. Pin the enemy in, not die. All those things, super useful in a skirmish game when you have fewer models. And so I want to end this video talking about why is this cool? Why did I choose to talk about the initiates? Well, really, I do love the models. I think that the regiment represents some really awesome things about Conquest that, I don't know, just a lot of regiments in the Dweghom stuff specifically, there's not a lot of like working together kind of brought through in the models, and this is a faction that literally they work together. Like the shields have a carve out thing for the spears to go through. They have to work together, and they're all on the same page, even more so than other regiments in this faction. They want a religious experience. They are preparing themselves and they are baptizing themselves in war to go stand before war. Whether or not they will achieve such grandiose dreams is up to you, the player. But like, if I'm thinking like a slow grow league, I would love to have the story, at least, of an initiate achieving their goals. That would be so freaking awesome. And one last thing I want to touch on is I love units that harken back to the core origin stories of a unit. So, things like men-at-arms for the 100 Kingdoms, they're a bit generic because they're supposed to be. They're supposed to just represent dudes that, this particular noble lord rabbled together, turned into an army, and marched with. Same thing with militia. When you talk about these kinds of units, though, that have an intrinsic tie, the initiates are trying to walk down the religious path of the Dweghom, and this is part of their, I like the word pilgrimage, they say reenact, and so it puts them in a very vital and relevant place within the faction. We are the ones who want to stand before a god. To do that, we're going to work together. And we're not all going to make it out of here. We understand that when we take the oath to, do the Dukaro or whatever it's called, the descent of their ancestors. It's such a cool idea, especially bringing up rituals and stuff like that. Like anytime you can get a snapshot into the belief system, the minutia of it, it's really cool. Like seeing how they name maybe certain holidays or different types of pilgrimages, that kind of stuff. It's always fun. So I think the initiates are a ton of fun. I would love to hear your thoughts on the kit. To be honest, a lot of the Dweghom stuff I already owned was from their kind of very, very early initial releases of the faction, and Parabellum's model quality has skyrocketed since then. So things like, the Hold Warriors and the guys with little crossbows, they're a little rough looking, but these initiates they're fire. They just snap together. Everything fits really well in terms of locking the spear into the shield. When you have them ranked up, I like First Blood more, so they can just kind of move around freely, but they're just terrific. Let me know your thoughts on the initiates and also the Dukaro as well, and what you think that little pilgrimage would be like. Also, do you think that why do you think that they have to get an experience before the descent? I would love to hear your opinion on that as well. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you in my next Conquest lore video. Happy wargaming.